Well, good morning everybody and welcome to this Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee held on Monday the 6th of November at 10 o'clock in the Oak Room here at the County Building in Stafford. The meeting will be webcast live and archived for 12 months and welcome to everybody watching us outside of this organisation. Can we begin please with apologies?
Thank you, Chair. I've received apologies from Councillor Spencer and Cabinet members Ian Parry and Mark DeVille.
Are there any other apologies? Item 2 is declarations of interest. Do you have a declaration? Can I remind members that if during the proceedings of the meeting you realise there is a declaration that you haven't declared, if you can just make yourself known to me and we'll make sure that is recorded. Thank you. So item 3 are the minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of September 2023. If I go through page by page, Councillor Purd.
I was just going to mention, Chair, without being pedantic or too excessive, there is a spelling mistake under paragraph 16, section 16, second paragraph, second line. I think the word is process rather than proses.
Provided, it says.
The head of Member of Democratic Services gave a short presentation outlining the review process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Purd. So, that being noted, shall we go through page by page? So, page 1, page 2, page 3, and page 4. All happy with the minutes, with that amendment? Thank you very much indeed. We'll move on to item 4, which is the Integrated Performance Report, Quarter 2. This is the report of the Leader of the Council, Councillor White, and the Cabinet Member for Finance. With Councillor White today is the Assistant Director of Strategy and Transformation, Lindsay Bissell. You're both very welcome. Leader.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Chairman, and welcome. Before I start on this report, I just wanted to take us back to the ONS that took place on the 1st of August, and just wanted to confirm with members of the committee that you'd had the feedback note dealing with the items that came up during that meeting. So information was sent to Mandy on the 15th of August, and I'll just blast through it quickly, just so that members are aware that we did pick up on everything that was discussed where you needed further information. So there was a question about information for reasons for the child re-referral rates. I think that was Councillor Pert asked that. 13.7% of referrals to children's social care were re-referred within 12 months in May 2023, which is lower than the latest benchmarks that are available for 2022 for England, which is 21.5%, the West Midlands at 19.1%, and our statistical neighbours at 22%. So ours is 13.7 for reference. The 2022 figure for Staffordshire was 15.4%, and this was the lowest of our statistical neighbours, and a reduction compared to the previous year of 17.4%. The low percentage can be associated with the robustness of our planning and interventions from social work teams. Then information was requested about wood-burning stoves and the source of that wood. There's a fairly lengthy response to that. Would you wish me to go through it, Mr. Chairman, or shall we refer it to circulate it?
That's fine, circulate, thank you.
And then finally, information sent, I think the following, it's the same day. Send Transport review. We are currently undertaking a review of Send Transport, which involves the exploring of potential opportunities to refine our processes in order to ensure the Council is meeting with both its statutory requirements and delivery of Staffordshire's Send strategy. Following this review, where there are any proposed changes to Send Transport policy, this will be subject to discussions with the ONS Committee and Cabinet, as well as public consultation. And then finally, highway repairs. We went into highway repairs, key concern from this committee and main complaints from local residents in the area. Our response was that highways demand will be assessed and included where relevant in the quarter 2 based on the latest performance information and input from the service area. And you'll note from your quarter 2 reports there is significantly more information in this report than there was in the previous one. So, Mr. Chairman, with that pattern of taking those questions that come up, responding quickly, we were able to respond on the 15th of August to the meeting on the 1st. I think 2 weeks is a reasonable timescale with your consent, and hopefully if members have got anything that follows up from that, then they can do so. But to today's report, you have it in front of you. I don't intend to go through it line by line, but I'll start with some key highlights. The UK Real Estate and Investment Forum, which is taking place next year, is going to build on the success of last year. We've had great success with the Household Support Fund, with 28,000 families supported, and the Holidays, Activities and Food programme of 49,000 places. Again, at this juncture, I would implore those people who take a place on the Holiday, Activity and Food programme, if you've been allocated a place, please take it, because we do have cases where, for example, might have 14 slots available, all 14 will be taken, and then only 7 or 8 children will turn up. And I think that's sad for those people that would wish to have a place, but it's denied to them because other people have rushed in and then not turned up. We do have some challenges which are clearly set out in this report. We don't hide from those challenges at all, and they're particularly around children's services. We have Ofsted in this week. We've had Ofsted in last week. They're in this week doing their field work, so we will in due course find out what they think about our services. But those challenges are particularly around rising costs and placement pressures. We've known about those for some time. Increasing complexity of cases, an increase in EHCPs, but we've got additional key workers. The portfolio holder lobbied hard for additional key workers for SEND, and we've now got those in place. And then we've got the additional issue around the statutory override for our high needs block, which the MTFS subcommittee of this group have been looking at. It is a cause of concern to us. The statutory override nationally is an amount of money which is eye-watering. Ours is increasing. We're doing what we can to manage it, but it's still an issue. To the revenue specifically, in quarter two, we're reporting an overspend of 7.7 million. That's 1.1% of our turnover versus our quarter one position, which was 9.5 million or 1.39. So brought it under a bit of control this quarter. And then just moving on then to a final point from me about EHCPs. We've got additional funding for 10 additional educational psychologists, and I think we've got 5 so far. I'm looking. Yes, 5. We've got 5 in place. Sadly, the educational psychologists will be taking industrial action this month, I think, which isn't really. Sorry. We've got 7. 7 additional ed psychs, which is great news. But they will be taking industrial action this month, which, for the reasons that they've set out in their publicity on this, that will put us back a little bit, but we continue to work hard to reduce the number of EHCPs and increase the educational psychologists' input to that process. So, Mr. Chairman, if it's okay with you, it's probably more useful for me to receive and try to answer questions. I've got Lindsay Bissell with me who'll be able to help out if there's anything I get stuck with.
That's fine. Thank you very much, Councillor White. I think it's fair to say that the areas of challenge that we see before us are the same that we're actually looking at through the MTFS working group. And it's been very interesting that members of that group have been able to understand a bit more in finer detail the actual challenges that this authority has. But in saying that, I think we are heading it up at the head. We are looking into areas where we can possibly report back to Cabinet some ideas that we've had in the working group. And I know it will come up later on in the work programme, but it's really keen that we push ahead with that, because I'm really keen that we give Cabinet enough time to look at some of the thoughts that we've had as an MTFS working group to make sure there's time for them to evaluate them and take that forward. So that work is ongoing, but needless to say, a lot of the challenges that we find financially for the County Council ones that we're actually looking into in further detail. Councillor Worthington, did you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to say, unfortunately, HCP is on the rise, and unfortunately, I think that will continue. But I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank Jonathan for the help that he's given me with an issue which I had. And he's been very helpful from the very beginning. So I'd just like to express my thanks for Jonathan in a very difficult situation. Thank you.
So, members, we now have the opportunity to... Councillor Purse.
Were you going to say ask questions? in which case can I do that?
Thank you. I'll just go back to say we now have the opportunity, members, this is our opportunity to review the performance of Q2, the financial position in delivering our strategic plan against the medium-term financial strategy. So, Councillor Pooh, would you like to start?
Thank you, Chairman, and sorry for interrupting you for the second time this morning. I'll try and behave for the rest of the meeting. I just wanted to start with two just broad comments. The first comment relates to page 24 with the social care brokerage. In all of the time that I've chaired Health Overview and Scrutiny, I think that's the best long-term position we've seen. And it's such an important stat because it does have an impact in terms of other partners and their ability to run their organisations. I'm particularly thinking in terms of that sort of fit for discharge, medically fit for discharge figure out of the NHS. So the fact that actually we are achieving the rates that we are within the brokerage service across home care, care homes and residential, I think is something that we should comment on and say is a real positive, and obviously helped by additional government funding to unlock some of the problems that have been sitting there for a long period of time. The second point I wanted to just touch on was the quality of the data. You know, the packs now reflect, in my view, something which can be scrutinised and analysed and seeing trends. And I really welcome that because, you know, it's taken a long time to get to a point where actually the management information and KPIs are something that can be scrutinised effectively through this committee. So thank you. I would only maybe suggest one minor improvement, which is if we could change some of the axes of graphs, rather than starting every graph at 0, and then not being able to see the tolerance because we're looking at something at 96% or 95%. Actually, if we change the tolerance of that graph and showed it at 90, we might actually be able to see, you know, those subtle changes and drive those improvements that we'll, bless you, that we all want to see for our residents, and that would be the only minor comment I'd make there. The substantive points I wanted to make are as follows, however. I think within the pack, the narrative of the pack, it'd be nice to see a bit more on unemployment, because I think it's a great success story for Staffordshire. You know, we are across all of our districts and boroughs and across the whole of the county, you know, we're in advance of the national figures, we're in advance of the West Midlands regional figures, and we're in advance of Stoke-on-Trent's figures. And I think that's something we should be celebrating and probably putting more in the front of other people's minds. Now, I accept it's in the narrative, but I do think that actually it's a real success story for Staffordshire in terms of encouraging businesses to either open and become startups, or to encourage other businesses into Staffordshire. However, if you look on page 28 at the youth unemployment graph, I do think that there is an opportunity for us to maybe take some lead in trying to reduce that gap of 2% or so, which is on top of current unemployment levels. Because those are the people who are going to be our future. Those are the people who are going to be in the workforce the longest. Those are the people who are going to need the greatest skills. And I would encourage maybe getting together with some of the other providers and other organisations who are interested in this area to try and reduce that 2% gap. The other comment I'd just like to make is on paragraph 75, page 37. Could the leader indicate what other funding streams were looked at and what other projects were looked at as part of the COVID funding projects that were shortlisted, i.e. what were the long list as well as what are the successful ones? Thank you, Chair.
Leader. Take some more questions first, Councillor White, or do you want to respond to those?
I'm happy to respond to those.
Okay.
Magnify that up a bit, Lindsay. Thank you for your comments about the nature of the report. Of course, we find ourselves always in the presentation of data between a rock and a hard place. Those people that can read graphs well and those people are perhaps less able to do so. A sophisticated reader of graphs like yourself will, of course, appreciate that the line at the bottom would be at 90% and the line at the top would be at 100%. But people who perhaps skim reports would say, oh, they see the middle of the pack. And then you then have to have that awkward conversation about, well, have you tried looking at the y-axis to see what the... Yeah. Yeah, there we go. It's just been illustrated neatly for me there. The narrative around unemployment is something that I do emphasise in every cabinet meeting. So you'll find that the deputy leader at every single cabinet meeting will give an update on the employment and economy component verbally. Your point is a good point, which is that we are creating a verbal narrative through cabinet meetings. We need to put that narrative into our packs so that people can actually see it, and it is recorded as the state of the nation at every turn. The youth unemployment thing is a really important one, and I think there is an opportunity as we transition from LEP to the new arrangements with bringing the sort of economic, the strategic economic component into the local authority, to just address some areas where there are some gaps. So the LEP, as you know, because you've been involved with LEPs for as long as I have, has focused on pouring concrete, creating employment sites, encouraging jobs and growth, which has been great. And the chairman of the committee has also been involved in LEPs for a long time as well. But there's also, there's components within those groups of people who are finding jobs who haven't been serviced perhaps as well as they could be. The young people in particular. I'd also highlight women returning to work after having a child. That's another area which is very important for those that want to do it. So there are some gaps. You're correct to identify them. We do need to work out how we will address that. I can't give you the answer to that now. The proposals for the remaining funding areas, which I've got in front of me, I can't remember how the list was drawn up at this right now. We can find out for you and find out if there was anything else that was considered, or whether or not that was just the list that we came up with. Yeah, I'm not even going to speculate, so we'll get an answer to you on that one. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Purdy, do you want to come back? No. Councillor Yates.
Acknowledge that something which the Chair said earlier about the MTFS, and that is the work which we've been doing, in conjunction with cabinet member over there, Jonathan, and the fact that we have drilled down a lot on that. The one comment which I will make is that I think the issue with the ECHPs is something which is obviously a national issue and is showing rises which we're struggling with, and obviously we're doing the recruitment on that. But I think there's got to be an emphasis as well, and somewhere in the discussion there's got to be early years intervention before preschool, so we can actually predict these as they happen, and potentially put intervention schemes in at very early days. So that's the only comment I was going to make on that. On page 15, there's reference to slippage on the highways repairs, and there's reference to the fact that July and August were very wet. And I think that ties in very strongly with the adaptation strategy, which we've just recently approved. And the fact that we're suffering an awful lot of surface water flooding and surface water, and the emphasis which needs to be put on gully and drain clearage, because I think if we don't do that, and we have certainly slipped on that, because there's certainly been roads in the north of the county which I've driven on over a number of weeks now, which have got existing flooding on. And when you speak to the highways team, they are aware of the problem being a long-standing problem. I think that's an area which we really need to be looking at to get some of that improvement, and that will have a knock-on effect certainly when the winter months start coming and we get freeze and thaw, and actually protecting the road surfaces from further damage. So that's something which I would like, which I think we could potentially pick up on the MTFS at the appropriate time, but I think that's something which we've got to really drill down on and get involved in. It's all right having a glossy document, but that document's got to turn in something which is an intention to something which we're working on. I'm sure that's the aim on that. And then the other thing, just a minor point, there's reference to the issues at the Chatterley Valley site and the slippage there. And that has a knock-on effect on the road network, because up in that part, Peacock's Hay is still closed. So I'm just wondering what the update situation and how that's affecting the timelines on the delivery there, both from the point of view of reopening the road network around, and actually delivery of that site, which is a key employment site within the north of the county. Thank you.
Thank you. On the early prevention of EHCPs, one of the components of the transformation has been particularly working closely with families to try and prevent children coming into the care settings. There is when it comes to EHCPs themselves, whether or not earlier intervention could help with a child needing an EHCP or not is a matter which I'm not qualified to say. I'll speak to Mark Sutton about the potential of working with preschools and others to think about how we could potentially avoid some children needing an EHCP with a slightly different slant to their education. I think that might be where you're angling on that, but that'll require a conversation between Jonathan Price and Mark Sutton to see how we can dovetail those two together. But it's an interesting question. On the climate change adaptation, I suppose there's two separate components to this. First of all is the climate change strategy, which looks more broadly, and then the other component is the way the highways respond to dealing with the increased amount of water that we have falling from the skies. Gully cleaning is something that we've been working on certainly since November of last year, and we are seeing improved results because we're getting more gullies cleaned. There is still work to do. That's undoubtedly the case. And certainly I can speak to my division in this particular instance. There's been some work that required, first of all, it was jetting. This is Plantation Lane near Marlow. The thing needs jetting, and then you send a CCTV camera down it. You see that there's route ingress and all this sort of stuff. So there's quite a lot of work that is required on these things, and it does take some time, but it is something that the Highways Department is working its way through. You, of course, understand that this is a county of 6,400 kilometres of road, so it does take quite a while, despite the fact we've put additional investment into the highways portfolio. I'm afraid, Councillor Yates, I can't speak to the Chatterley Valley Highways thing at this meeting. It's quite tricky being leader of the council and then coming into a meeting like this and people asking specific questions about a set of traffic lights in their division. John Francis just asked me about the Chell Road as I walked through the door, and I do my best to be omnipotent but fail on occasion, so I can't give you an answer to the Chatterley Valley question at this point, I'm afraid.
Councillor Yates, did you want to come back on any of that?
Yes. Firstly, I'm very happy about the response with regards to the early years intervention, because that is a key thing, because I sort of look at the fact that, okay, we all accept that COVID has really got in the way of a lot of children's social development and whatever. But the reality of it is that we've moved from a situation of a semblance of control and static ECHPs to something where, you know, we've got a forecast of growth, and we're obviously having to put a lot more staff and a lot more resource into that, and it's, in some respects, we've got to try and find a way, which we all accept, and this is not a lecture of trying to get that graph to obviously curve and go down. So it's a case of putting, you know, what was there which is missing, what was there before which we can actually improve on, what wasn't there ever which we can actually look at. I think parental support at an early stage is extremely important to help the child's development, and making sure that they've got, you know, children at a very young age have got those social skills, and that does require a degree of intervention on that. And I think we can use various matrices to try and identify key areas, either geographically or socially, where we need to put those interventions in, and which has a direct correlation with the requirement for ECHPs. And I think that would produce medium long-term savings and better results for the children which we're here to support.
Okay, I think that was more of a statement than a question. So
It is, but you did ask if we wanted to come back, so
that's fine. That's fine. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. My question is, the holiday activities, when you say that half of the children aren't turning up, is this at a cost to the county, or is there a way of having a refund, and do we know why the children aren't turning up?
There is a cost involved, and we don't get the money back. Now, I'm citing one example that was given to me. I'm sure there are plenty of examples where you know, there's 20 places and 20 children have turned up. But there are cases where children aren't turning up, and I'm simply appealing to people to say, look, if you've committed to it, please do go to it. I think that's a reasonable request to ask of somebody who's taken a place that could have otherwise gone to somebody else, because that's a reasonable thing to do.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Peters.
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking at paragraph 89. A review of SEND transport is being implemented, perhaps undertaken rather than implemented, to identify any action that may be taken. This question, to me, keeps occurring at these meetings, and it's like trying to grab a piece of soap in a bath and never quite get an answer to it. I'm often reminded, because we have a facility in my division in Stretton, the students come from South Derby, North Leicester, outside of Staffordshire. We had this conversation with a cabinet member as well. What are we doing to try and keep this Staffordshire orientated?
I'm going to bring in now, if I can, Councillor Johnson Price. If you just want to join us, Jonathan, if you want to give a response to some of those answers to help the leader with this. Are you happy with it?
Damn right, I'm
I
happy.
thought you would be, Leader.
Seeing as we've got the portfolio holder here, may as well get
Might as
hear
well
it from the
utilise
horse's
it.
mouth. Not that he's a horse, you understand. No.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Price.
Just retrospectively, you were talking about the early years stuff. Mark Sutton and both Natasha Moody worked very, very hard to make sure that we've got the right support for children in those earlier years. There's money taken from the DSG for early years that's used for that, as well as government funding from various pots. So we actually do quite a lot of work with not only families but children to identify need early and to support them, and to prevent the need to go down the educational healthcare plan route should we support them earlier. So I just wanted to point out that actually as an authority we do an awful lot of work around that, because it's an extremely important point that you raised. School transport in particular at the moment, as Councillor Peters has mentioned, does come up on a regular basis. We're doing a full review on school transport at the moment, not just home to school transport, but SEND transport as well. Some of the issues we have currently is we were not always quick enough to identify school places for our own children that needed them, particularly special schools. So what we would find is that exterior authorities, and we are bordered by numerous authorities, would come forward and take those school places. That would then mean we were looking for places elsewhere within the county, and we would be transporting children all over the place, which is, in my opinion, not acceptable and not right for a child either with special needs. They don't want to be sat in a taxi for 50 minutes in each direction, although I think recommendation is about 45 minutes for a child, but it's not right. So we're doing a full gap analysis at the moment of our special school places across Staffordshire, making sure that where that need is greatest, those schools are. That will also then reduce journey times. So if you've got a population or a large cohort of children with educational healthcare plans who require special schools, then we need them to be closer to home, and that will reduce those journeys as well. At the moment, we have a lot of single-use taxis, and it's not single-use taxis just because little Johnny won't get in a taxi with another child because of behavioural issues, but actually because it's the only thing on the route, and it's the only child from that area being transported somewhere else. So obviously, we're not going to put a bus or a minibus on just to pick up one child. It is a single occupancy taxi, so we're looking at that at the moment. We've also got the Q route software, which will make sure that we plan those routes properly, so those children are on those shortest journeys as well. And as you're aware, we've brought a paper forward looking at supporting mainstream schools to support those children with the more moderate learning, so that they can be supported within their local schools, because it's important to keep them local. And again, that will also reduce those journey times as well. And of course, we're looking at all of those more expensive journeys just to make sure that they are costed correctly and that those children are getting the right transport. And we also offer and encourage parents, if they're able to do so and don't want to pop their child onto a bus, they can also go for a personal travel budget, and they can transport their child to and from school under their own steam if they wish. So an awful lot of work going on. And there will be a paper coming to informal cabinet on the 23rd of November, I believe, and at some point you will see that as well. So I hope that's been helpful. Councillor Peters.
Councillor Peters, do you want to come back?
Yes, please. Yes, thank you. That really has been helpful. I was going to just frame my final comment in the context of, are you comfortable? Is this moving at pace? noting the predicted overspends, etc. But I'm reassured when you said that an informal paper is coming on the 23rd of November. So that the outcome of that, I think we ought to keep our eye on, Chair. Thank you very much, Jonathan.
Leader of the Council.
It is moving at pace because we have to have it moving at pace because of the rate of increase of the overspends. The other aspect to it, which I suppose is broader than just Staffordshire, I was hosting an event on Friday night in South Worcestershire, and there was about 40 people in the room, and EHCPs and Send Transport came up at that meeting as well. I happened to be performing the role of an independent chair of the meeting. And what was very, very interesting is to hear people there asking exactly the same questions that residents do in Staffordshire, which is, how can it be right that children in this part of the world are being transported to Gloucestershire, to Oxfordshire and all this sort of stuff for special educational needs? So there is a nationwide problem here of the competition between authorities and parents to find places for their children manifesting itself on lots and lots of journeys in taxis to get to schools. I wonder how successful England's taxi drivers would be without local authorities funding the majority of their day-to-day work, transporting children here, there and everywhere. And as Councillor Price points out, it's not a normal start to your life, is it? You want to be part of a group of people who are going to school, enjoying the experience of a school which is relatively close to you, and getting home in what you might describe as a reasonably normal way. Anyway, so I just wanted to point out that these problems are not unique to Staffordshire, and that there's frustration expressed by people elsewhere as well.
Thank you for that. Councillor Heath.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, the number of children that go on SEN, is there an opportunity, maybe some of them could go to mainline schooling, if we could put any pressure on the heads of some of the mainline schools? Got to be careful what to say, haven't I? I'm a bit blunt sometimes. Surely, I think I've read it or I've seen it on the TV, that some children are very borderline, and if we put a little bit more funding into the mainline schools and gave them encouragement, they could enjoy their education in mainline schooling, which would save us an awful lot of money because they go on the normal school bus, if there was a school bus, or they would be taken by the parents, which is the norm. I'm just wondering, as an authority that has education and some control over it, if there isn't anything we can do to sort of choose the schools the children go to.
Thank you, Councillor Heath, and a good question, of course. We took a paper to Cabinet recently which talks about that CDIS model, so that's that in-reach, outreach work we're doing with children. And that in-reach work is where we'd have a district model, we'd have a support team supporting a mainstream school to support a child with moderate learners difficulties, because that's where I believe those children should be. And those schools are more than capable of supporting those children. Of course, it comes with some funding as well as the school's additional funding to support that child. Where there's an extreme case where we feel that there isn't support with moderate learners, there isn't support for the child because those needs are more complex, then obviously a special school would be absolutely the right support. And again, we would put that support there as well. So yeah, I can forward you the paper actually, Councillor Heath, and it makes for a very, very good read. And it's a very positive story for this authority as well. We are absolutely putting our children first and making sure they get the right setting in the right place with absolutely the right support from us.
So,
I would appreciate reading that because it's not something that is advertised or is out there. I wasn't aware that we were doing so much. So yeah, good luck with the work you're doing.
could I just add that we have been lobbying quite strongly at a national level for a tweak to the Ofsted inspection regime for schools, because the regime as it stands doesn't encourage heads to actually be as inclusive as I would like them to be. I think that children benefit because, look, when you get out into the wider world, school is a preparation for life, isn't it? And when you get out into the wider world, you encounter a range of people with a range of abilities. Look, we got John. And so... So going to school is part of getting used to the way things are going to be in your day-to-day life as an adult. and to sort of offer all children who perhaps are struggling with their education or struggling to an extent with their behaviour. I do appreciate that for some children that's just not possible to be in a mainstream school, but I do think that sort of level of inclusiveness ought to be something that the inspection actually acknowledges, and you get rewarded for being inclusive rather than penalised because it affects your results. So we have been speaking to government ministers, and I've been banging this drum for a very long time now about tweaks to the Ofsted inspection regime. It would not require primary legislation. It would require a tweak to regulations. So it's doable. What I don't understand is why it's not being done.
Councillor Francis, as the leader mentioned you in his response, did you want to come back?
Sorry?
As the leader mentioned you a few moments ago, would you like to respond?
Well, I did indicate. I did indicate, Chairman. There's a lot of anomalies in this lot. And I've been at it for 20-odd years. And it all comes down to LSD at the end of the day. It's pounds, shillings and pence. And when you look on page 40, paragraph 88, we are overspending by 2.877 million. Now, there's been a significant increase in demand in the 14 years I've been on this council, and as chair of Marston Special School. Marston Special School, when I went there, I got 48 planned places. I moved it from the south end of town to the north end of town in what was a derelict person centre, and we refurbished the school and put it on the right track, and the planned places went up to 89. We're now at 155. So that's 110, 12 children extra in the last 8 years. And the reason is we've got a population increase for start off. We have the army barracks coming in here, and Stafford's housing building site at the minute because the amount of families coming in. So we've got a proportional increase in children. It's true that moderate learning difficulties children should be in mainstream schools. However, and I keep banging on about this, I've done it for donkey's years. However, if the Senko in that school is not good enough, is not trained enough, and has been taken out of a classroom as a teacher and said, this is your job, you're a Senko now, and they haven't got a clue what they're doing, we're in trouble. That's exactly what's happening. And my head teacher is sending some of her teachers out to help the mainstream schools. And it's a hell of a difficult job. And that comes down to money. So we've got to proportion some of our budgets in the school for our teachers to go out with the SEND children to help them in mainstream education. And it's a difficult scenario. It's a difficult scenario for this authority. And Jonathan's been great at helping us out with some of this stuff, and we need to expand the school as it is. So with this significant overspend, 2.877 million, and we had 8 million a few years ago to put into educational services, which disappeared down the plug hole as far as I can see. We need a lot more, and we need a lot more accurate budget forecasting. And as far as the HCPs go, we've been banging on about that for years, haven't we, Mike? About getting them sorted out with the children, because as the leaders just mentioned, these children have got one opportunity, a small window to get their education in the right place at the right time. And the EHCPs have been a big anathema for a long time for this authority. I think we're getting it right. Jonathan's recruited more staff, which is great. The unions and the messing about that they're going to do with going on strike and everything is a disgrace. Well, that's the way of the world at the minute. So, from my point of view, the budget needs increasing. We need more accountability as far as the mainstream schools go, as far as appointing Senkos who know what they're doing, who are qualified and can help these children. And that's the way I want it to go. Thank you, Chairman.
Your leader.
Thank you. any social services or education services within a local authority, the cost is driven by three factors. Volume, that is the number of people using the service. Acuity, what condition they're in when they come into the service. And price, how much we have to pay for the service. It's the same in adult social services, it's the same in children's services, and it's the same in special educational needs and disabilities. Let me talk first about the volume. Councillor Yates very accurately stated that the COVID tail was something that was going to have an impact for the long term on our children. For many children, the point at which they were learning how to socialise as 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, was a point at which all they had was mum and dad, or just mum, or granny, or grandpa, whoever was in their bubble, the telly, and some toys. That was it. And that was the point in their life when they were supposed to be socialising. So we've got an unspecified number of children coming into the education system for whom their normal development was severely interrupted by COVID. And Councillor Yates has spoken to that already. So that's the volume thing. We don't know what that number is going to be because he can't predict it because we don't know what the impact is going to be. So budgeting in this area is difficult because we don't know the input numbers. The second is the acuity. What condition people are in when we have to deal with them. Councillor Price has got a programme of work with Councillor Sutton which looks at attenuating, i.e. shaving off some of the acuity of the children that are presenting themselves in our system. What can we do more to reduce the difficulties that they are suffering? And we're working on that. But it is the case that due to circumstances that we're all aware of, the acuity part, how difficult they are when we get them, is increasing. And it's increasing because we've got, not just the COVID point, but we've got parents of younger children who have a different way of parenting. And that's not necessarily the best way of parenting. That's the reason why we have the family-based model, the district-based model, early help and intervention to try and help parents to become better at doing their role as parents. So that's dealing with doing what we can to deal with the acuity. And then the final point is price. So we know that prices are going up, and we know that we need to pay people more in order to get services delivered. National living wage is going up, and that feeds into every tier of salaries. So that means that we are having to pay more for the same amount of services. So with those three, when you combine those three, volume, acuity, price, you find that budgeting is actually very difficult. And what I would say to you in response to your challenge is that 2.877 million overspend in that area is not satisfactory. But given the extent of the unknowns that we have as an authority, and as we try to budget using all our resources available to us, our finance team, cabinet, the MTFS working group, this committee, how can we best get to a number that reflects what we think it's going to be? And how do we work towards it? And then asking Councillor Price, okay, and his team, what can you do to mitigate the volume, acuity and price thing so when we give you a budget, you can stick to it as close as possible. And it's challenging, there's no doubt about it. But I would say to you, as a direct response back to your point about the 2.877 million, is that we are much, much better at budgeting than we have ever been. We have a pretty sophisticated understanding of the drivers of cost in this authority. And for me to be able to speak to volume, acuity and price in the way that I am should be indicating to you that actually I think I have a reasonable understanding of what causes these costs to be driven forward. There's always going to be a challenge of trying to maintain those budgets. We are in a better place than other authorities. We're not as good as I would like us to be. I'm always demanding more from Cabinet to achieve those budgeted targets. But sometimes, when it comes to looking at those three factors I've described, sometimes when we think about making a saving that we thought was viable, when it comes to the practicalities of it, it's not as viable as we thought it would be, because it may not be managerially deliverable, it may not be politically acceptable, or it may be a combination of a range of other things which prevents us from moving forward. The Senko point you make, I think, is a fair one. We do have a challenge around finding or making sure that we've got sufficiently qualified Senkos. That's something that I know Jonathan is working on, and given his circumstances, is very passionate about these things. That's the reason why I'm delighted that Jonathan, Councillor Price, is the portfolio holder, because of his passion on this subject. But we will continue to work on this. It's a long-winded answer to a long-winded question, to be honest with you. But anyway, hopefully that goes some way to address those concerns.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Francis, would you like to come back?
Right. Thanks for that brief summary of what's going on. I appreciate this authority. It's one of the best in the country, this authority, there's no doubt about that. And all the years I've been on it, we've gone from good to good to good. We've got to get better. And the reason I say that is that we have put a load of money in to educational services over the last 10 years, quite a significant amount. And it's been great because it's been used properly. However, as I alluded to earlier on, we've got to support these children, and the amount of children is increasing. And the other thing is that if you look about transport services, this is something that I've been banging on about for years, and Jonathan knows I've been banging on about it, and his previous portfolio holder to that. So the Send Transport is an anathema where we are transporting children from one end of the county to the other end of the county, which is absolutely ridiculous. And we've been looking at that for years, and I haven't seen any conclusions on it yet, or where we're going with it. So that report that you talked to Jill about, I'd like to see that. Yes, in real terms, 2.877 million is not a lot of money as an overspend quantum, but it's still a significant amount of money, and we've got to control the budgets in a fairer way. But as you say, I think we've got to go back to central government as far as the looked after children. Being on corporate parenting, I ran the meeting last week, the week before, about children coming into care, and particularly unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. So we've got some serious issues that are coming down the track, and will smack us in the face big time in a couple of years' time. So we've got to take all those variations into account. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Francis. I think there's quite a few statements in there, but if you'd like to come back, Jonathan, Councillor Price, on that.
Some wise words coming from the colleague on my right. He said I'd leave it if I were you. But no, just very briefly, I appreciate the work that all of our special schools do, and Marshlands I've visited on numerous occasions. I've been invited by Councillor Francis and Kim Prince, of course, who are doing a fantastic job for us. We've already expanded that site previously onto the Tillington Manor site, which John was instrumental in helping us with. And of course, we will look at any expansion if it is required. Obviously, our ultimate goal is to get those special school places down and more children into mainstream, but obviously the number of children coming forward with more complex needs is also increasing, so that is putting pressure on the system, and also giving the pressures that we're coming under with school transport. We are an extremely well-run authority, and I've been very impressed with the work that's been done by both the leader and Ian around the MTFS as well. Some of the areas around children's services in particular, I know that Councillor Sutton is working very, very hard and lobbying around that at the moment, and the pressures that's putting us under. And the high needs block for me is the area, as we discussed at a previous meeting, and I won't go into heavily, but of course you're aware we're doing an awful lot of lobbying work around that as well. We invited the MPs to attend a meeting recently in Westminster to talk about SEND. Unfortunately, only one attended. I was quite up. Yeah, I was a bit perturbed about that, particularly as they'd had plenty of notice, and we'd lobbied them and written to them on numerous occasions. But the high needs block is something we absolutely need government to look at and tackle at some point. But we are keeping a close eye on our budgets, and we will do everything we can to make sure that we mitigate any increase in costs. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Clements.
Thank you, Chair, bringing us back to the meeting. I've got a couple of questions, and then I just wanted to say something about highways, if that's okay. Paragraph 17 talks about a family network pilot. What's that going to entail, and how's that going to be carried out? Then we on about climate change analysis that we did between September and May. How long will it take before we get the results and a report on that, so we know what the residents of Staffordshire actually want us to do, reference climate change? Because we think we all know what we want to do. The council thinks it knows what it wants to do, but what do the people outside want us to do? And then disabled facilities grants. When can this be done on need rather than population per borough? Because I'm aware of boroughs, councils that don't spend their allocation, and then we've got councils that are trying to find money from somewhere else so that they can do the adaptations. So when can that actually change so that it works more fairly across the whole of Staffordshire? And then just, if I can, just finish on highways, Chair. Obviously, this is my chairman's role. More assessment is being done by inspectors. I'm really pleased that the timeliness of repairs is back on track. We are going into the winter period, and that's going to have an impact on, you know, the people doing the gritting, and let's hope we don't get lots of snow up in the moorlands, because that then affects the rest of the county. And we're still delivering our repairs on time, but what we do need is more members to interact with their highways managers, because you are the people on the ground, and I'm getting feedback from highways managers that they don't get any feedback from certain county councillors, which is disappointing. So, you know, that was more of a plea from me to interact with your highways managers to get the work done that you highlight. So thank you, Chair.
On the last point, I'm stunned that you've got members who aren't responding to the highways thing. I mean, I relish my DHP meetings and go through in some detail exactly what's going on. So more fool those people that aren't, they clearly don't get the same postbox that I get. But hey ho. But I'll pick that up in other places. On the DFGs, disabled facilities grants is an unsophisticated allocation of funding, and that was ever thus, I'm afraid. You're right to call for a more sophisticated needs-based approach. I think that would be a much better way of doing it. We have misfired on a couple of occasions trying to get DFGs delivered across the county. Probably about 8 years ago, I think, something like that. So whilst I understand your appeal and your request, the DFG is part of the Section 74, the Care Fund. Go get their BCF. Better Care Fund, thank you. It's part of the BCF, Better Care Fund allocations. Anybody who's been involved working with the NHS over the years will know that there tends to be just sort of a block of money and off you go and spend it sort of approach. I don't think that's the right way to do it. We won't be able to change that in short order because as a percentage of the Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent healthcare budget, DFG is a tiny, tiny amount of money and won't really attract attention. Your question about climate change and what people would be wanting from us rather than what we are going to do to them is not something I'm going to answer here and now, because otherwise poor old Councillor Tagg, when he comes to see you in a moment or two, will have no thunder. And so you can thunder at him with that question. The family network piece that you're talking about, we're still at the scoping stage for that. It will come to Councillor Spencer's committee in due course. And we can keep you abreast of the developments as they emerge. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Clements, did you want to come back? No. So, any other members got any who I haven't noticed wanted to speak, would like to speak? Anybody? If I can just make a few observations from the chair, then, if I may, and there's some really good news stories that have come out of this report, particularly. Under the encouraging good health and well-being, resilience and independence, on number 5, we're still managing to exceed the target on completed Care Act assessments within the 28 days, which is really good news. On number 6, the safeguarding contacts increased since June to August. An additional temporary resource has been put in place to review its pathways to identify further improvements. Just a question on how long that temporary resource is going to be available, and are there additional costs associated with that? Sorry, that's on paragraph number 6 on page 11, safeguarding contacts. So I'll just carry on with a couple more because they're just on 8 on the same page. Deprivation of liberty safeguards seem to be increasing, with 356 still waiting for Dole's assessment to commence. It talks there about additional resource agreed by Cabinet. Is it making a difference, and how long will that resource be available there to do that work under Dole's assessments? Shall I stop there for now? Thank you.
The Care Act assessments are a statutory requirement from the Care Act of 2014. We did build up quite a backlog of reassessments. They're supposed to be done every 12 months from memory. And what we've done is we've worked to reduce those in order to be statutorily compliant. And also just doing a sort of triage approach to Care Act assessments. There is actually a great deal of merit in doing this, and this is where the NHS is falling flat on its face with continuing healthcare. A Care Act, when you're reassessing somebody, you'll start off with a package of care. So let's say you've had a fall at home, you need quite a lot of support to start off with, and the reassessment process, as your health improves, will start to tail that off and reduce costs. So there is an incentive for us to make sure that we're doing our assessments in a timely way. And those cases that happened years and years ago where people had have the same package for 5 years is where I think in some respects, and perhaps Councillor Pert will pick this up in his scrutiny committee, when the NHS goes at continuing healthcare packages, what they're looking at is somebody who's provided with an end-of-life care package, assuming that somebody's going to pass away relatively soon, and they're still at it with a very, very expensive package a year and a half later. So those reassessments are really valuable to us. Deprivation of liberty safeguards is something which causes a great deal of frustration to me, because we were told that central government were going to change the legislation around deprivation of liberty safeguards a good number of years ago now, and they were going to bring in something called liberty protection safeguards. This would require primary legislation, would streamline the system and make the whole thing more affordable and more appropriate to those people that needed it. Legislation, there is none. And what's disappointing about that is that from what I observe at Parliament, they're not exactly run off their feet, are they, getting primary legislation through Parliament? So it would have been good to have that done. And the promise was made in 2018, I think it was, not delivered. And so we are having to manage our deprivation of liberty safeguards processes at the moment. Again, with this, we triage our approach. But there are an increasing number of people coming through. As the population gets older and more frail, we will get more people coming through on doles. To your question about the safeguarding contracts, those short-term contracts that are in place, don't know the answer to that, but I can get you an answer and get it back to you.
Thank you for that, Leader. I've just got a couple more, if I may. A good news story on support Staffordshire economy to grow, generating more and better paid jobs on page 15. I think it's on page 15, yes. One second, find it. No, sorry, I'll have to come back to that because I've lost where I was on that, sorry. Number 22. No, going back to, sorry, page 14, number 22. Generating more better paid jobs, sorry. Good there collaboration with the districts, Lichfield in particular, of course I would mention that, with a successful ambassador event marketing progress. We are Staffordshire brand promoted as a national conference. I think these are all good things that Staffordshire are doing. I think they're things that we should recognise, and we should make sure that we're telling people what's going on. If we look at how we, under the section how we work, delivery and finance, are both in green, number 35 talks about volunteer hours, valued at 13,500. Fantastic. How do we share this information with volunteers? And then how does this compare with previous quarters on the volunteering hours and how that's assessed?
I don't know the answer to the comparison to previous quarters on volunteer hours. We did an assessment of unpaid care probably about 10 years ago, and the value that brought to our economy as a result of that unpaid care. And that was worth 1.6 billion when we did an assessment. So without this volunteer work that goes on, we'd be a much poorer place. There are huge social benefits to volunteering, people interacting with others, feeling good about themselves, making the place better. And almost everybody I can think of in this room spends some time giving up time to help others. And it is probably one of the most satisfying things you can do as a human, to help another human to live a better life. And so I'm hugely grateful for it. I can't give you the comparison though, Chairman, but I just wanted to put a marker down for the appreciation that I have. As far as the economy thing is concerned, as I mentioned earlier, the local enterprise partnership is coming to an end. That will be brought into the upper tier local authorities. I'm very keen, because we've set up the leaders board, to making sure that all authorities in Staffordshire are part of that effort to make sure that we are delivering jobs growth and training appropriate to an area. I would ask government to consider delegating to local authorities the ability to deliver the skills agenda, because how would anybody from a desk in Whitehall know what skills are needed in the Moorlands as opposed to what's needed in Stafford? They don't, but we do, and the local authority leaders across Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent are in a much better place to help out with that. So not a direct answer to your question, but a wider point about how we can do more given the opportunity to do so.
Finally for me, just a couple more finally, on page 18, living within our means and deliver value for money. At number 41, it talks about this new online financial self-assessment portal that's being developed and launched. I just wonder whether there's any financial implication in relation to that being delivered.
There will be, but I don't know what it is off the top of my head. Fine. I'll get an answer to you.
And then finally, on the Economy to Grow dashboard, shows our GVA up 1.5 billion, which is a good indicator of prosperity within Staffordshire. And I think we said before, good employment rates against the national picture. It's really gone well there. And average earnings just over 32,000, national average being 33. So they're good trends. They're things that are moving Staffordshire forward. And I think we should always recognise those areas where we are doing well. And it's really important that we do that. That probably finishes for me. So if we go back to the recommendations then, committee, I think there's a couple of actions that we will just push and get into that in relation to, certainly with looking at the graphs, a bit of information to come back from the leader and cabinet members. But I think we've challenged the performance there. And I think we have got some issues or some areas that we can actually expand upon and get clearer clarity. But if all members are happy with that, we'll conclude that report and thank the leader and the portfolio holder for being with us to do and deliver that report. Everyone in favour of moving the report? Yeah. Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. So if we move on to agenda item 5, Entrust, review of changes. And I think, Councillor Price, you've been nominated by your colleagues to stay and give this one. And I think we also have Ian Turner, the Assistant Director for commercialisation and assets. He's going to be assisting you, I think, in this. So I'll pass over to Councillor Price. Thank you.
Yeah, good morning again, and good morning, Chairman. So I'm subbing today for Councillor DeVille. I'm not sure where he is, but it probably involves sunshine and cricket. Obviously, Entrust does cover my portfolio to a degree, as some of those services support the work that the portfolio does. But I'm very pleased that I've got Ian with me today, who will bail me out with any questions. So Entrust changes were reported to Scrutiny in October last year, and at the time a few members had reported that it didn't fully allow scrutiny of performance. So clarification was sought from the Chairman, and for this item a presentation of performance information in a simple way with red, amber and green indicators as requested. Useful when my PA printed it off in black and white, but we got there in the end. The report gives a brief reminder of the changes that were made in April of this year. So we brought back in-house the information, advice and guidance and early years services. And the following services are continuing on a 3-year rolling basis with Entrust, which is the education improvement, corporate services, catering, cleaning and grounds and property services. The changes in services and their value is also included in Appendix 2. And the contract includes a range of key performance indicators for the services, and these are reported on a monthly basis. So the cumulative performance report for this year, to date, is in Appendix 1. So trust performance at an operational level has generally been good over the contract to date, and the changes have been based on alignment with other Staffordshire County Council functions and opportunities for more efficient delivery internally rather than because of performance failures. Members should be aware that Entrust services operate within a reasonable tight regime of available funding and legislative, I can't say the word now, legislative, I know, I need a coffee, John, legislative constraints. So I will now hand back to you, Chairman.
Thank you. So we'll start with Councillor Francis.
Well, where do we go with this? Blooming heck. We've been on this corporate review for donkey's years, and on Entrust for 12, Entrust, and on with the MTFS for 10 years, 12 years. I have banged on about Entrust every year, month after month after month, and Mike Worthington will back me up on that. We've asked about where the dividends were, what's going on down there, how many employees they got, whether it was expanding, whether it was not expanding, whether it was going to go bump. Originally it was set up to be a godsend to us, and every size fits all, that they would go out and get extra work from other authorities like Shropshire or Wolverhampton or Derby or whatever to help with children's services and other bits and pieces. It's never happened. We're now pulling services back from them. I think it's an absolute shambles. When I was down there a couple of months ago, the offices were virtually shut. There was about a dozen people in the bottom floor. Where do we go with this? A, is it costing us money? B, why have we never had a dividend of it in 10 years? And C, what is the eventual outcome of this company? Is it going to be wound up? Is it going to carry on? Are we going to take all services back in-house, which is the way I think we should go? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Price.
I have the liberty of being able to pass that on to my officer, and Ian will answer those questions for you.
Okay, so that's obviously quite a long question. What I would, and I think the report does this, the original one that went to Cabinet, is that Entrust was set up with a range of objectives in a changing landscape in terms of education, and a significant part of it was de-risking for the County Council all of those changes in education. And Entrust overall has supported that and continued to provide good services where it provides them. And the Cabinet report did make that point. Also, over the life of the contract, there's been a significant amount of reduction in funding to Entrust, and that has required them to look closely at what services are profitable to continue and that kind of thing. And obviously members are aware that because it's a private company, those things do have to be profitable. So in terms of the service delivery of the services and the funding that we are able to give them, they do a good job. The biggest proportion of the services that you'll see that continue are property. A lot of those is about school expansion, some of the things we've talked about earlier in terms of adjusting schools for special educational needs and that kind of thing. And Entrust have very, very good performance on that. Sorry it isn't mentioned in the report, but very topical at the moment. The RAC, the concrete roofs, Entrust have performed really, really well with the tightening of the timescales for getting the schools cleared on that. They perform really well, so we have done all the schools that we are responsible for. So on the ground delivery is brilliant. The overall arrangement with Entrust. Really, I'm not qualified to talk about. But we don't believe that Entrust is likely to go bust or fail at any particular time. Part of the decision by Cabinet to keep the services that are in there at the moment were based on kind of benchmarking exercises in terms of cost, so we believe we get reasonable value for money on those ones. Entrust doesn't pay a dividend. It currently has debts to Capita, the majority, and that's why the decision by Cabinet, with lots and lots of discussions with Cabinet in the run-up to those changes in April, is more of a shift from a 20-year arrangement, which it was with break at 10 years, to the rolling 3-year contracts. So we are very much looking at it from a service delivery point of view in terms of some of those questions you've asked, value for money. The world didn't go in the way that was anticipated when Entrust was set up. So it hasn't turned into a growth company, as everybody knows. And in terms of the offices, of course, the world has also changed significantly, but Entrust do let out a significant proportion of that office space at the Riverway headquarters. So there's some local businesses in there, and that's good for them, and it generates a little bit of income in that changing landscape. Thank you.
Councillor Price.
Yeah, I just wanted to reinforce a couple of points that Ian had said, and the work that Ian does with Entrust and vice versa has been really, really good. As we said, we brought a couple of those services back in-house just because we felt that we could do them a little better ourselves, and it gave us a bit more flexibility around what we did with the money. The services that continue on that 3-year rolling basis are done very well by Entrust, and I have to say, and Ian pointed out, property services has been excellent. And you'll know, John, of course, because the special school that you help head up has had some work done, delivered by ourselves and Entrust to an extremely good standard, including some of the new schools we're building currently. Very, very good. And as Ian also alluded to, and I will mention this again, the work that Ian and his team and Entrust have done around making sure that our schools were all inspected and safe around RAC has been exceptional. It's been very, very good. So, and you'll be pleased to know that we didn't find any either. So that's also good news. So I'm happy with the Entrust contract in its current form, and I'm happy that we've got a shorter period of time that should things change in the near future, we have the ability to be able to pull those services back in-house if we're required. But I have to say the work that's currently at Entrust that we are doing with them is to an extremely good standard. I'm very, very pleased with that working relationship.
Councillor Francis.
Well, I'm glad you're happy because I'm not, and I never have been. And I don't think most members who've been in this council a long time have ever been happy with Entrust. And I can tell you categorically straight that as chair of Marston Special School, the contracted out services to Entrust, we pulled back in-house, and we've set up our own people to clean the school, look after the school. The only thing is, property services, we've got some fantastic people in property services that were chipped over to Entrust, and I don't think Entrust looked after them properly, and they were better in-house here because you could get at them, you could go to the office, you could talk to them, you knew if you got a problem, you could, and I've never been able to do that while they've been at Entrust. It's like, there's a glass wall, you can see them, but you can't talk to them. And I think it's been an absolute shambles, to be quite frank, and I'll never change my view on that. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Francis. Councillor Pert.
Thank you, Chair. And I actually think John's questions about the strategic elements are the right questions. And I struggled with this report. I sat and read it, and I'm not convinced I understood whether it told me anything more than I didn't already know. When you've got a set of KPIs which show 100% on everything, month in, month out, for loads and loads of different metrics, what are we measuring? It feels like we're measuring whether the process is in control rather than the outcomes. And I just felt that this report didn't tell me anything more than I already knew. It felt very opaque. Everything was rosy in the garden.
It's always been opaque, Jeremy.
And I think that the interesting question for me is this move to a 3-year contract. And I think the question that we should be getting to the bottom of is, what are the outcomes we're expecting to see in 3 years' time? What are the interim measures so that we can hold all parties to account from a scrutiny point of view on delivery of those? So I don't mind that the world has changed. I understand that. The world is always going to change, and it will change in 3 years' time. Maybe not as significantly as it did previously, but maybe what we should be looking at is those bits rather than minutiae showing 100% performance on every indicator. Because frankly, I've never seen an organisation, ever seen an organisation achieve 100% on every indicator, unless they are fiddling the indicators or they are meaningless. So let's get to the bottom of these things, because frankly, I'm not convinced this report does that. And that's not a criticism of the officers who brought this report or the cabinet members involved. It's really, you know, I'm not sure that we're really seeing the bit we were trying to get to the bottom of.
Thank you. Yeah, I think they're really good points made by Councillor Pert and Councillor Francis, and perhaps we need to have a new way of actually looking at the information within the report, and perhaps, as you rightly say, about all the KPIs all showing green, there's only one that shows amber, but the majority green. That, you're absolutely right, doesn't tell us a lot, but maybe with this new 3-year rolling contract, it gives us the opportunity to perhaps have some more indicators that actually tell us all year on year actually how they're performing. Councillor, Price.
Thank you. Ian's just raised a good point with me, actually, and I'm going to ask him if he'll step up and stay.
Yeah, thank you. So the report previously was a review of the contract changes, and that's what we've done, and then asked to provide that information. So what Councillor Pert has asked for, I think, is fine, but my request to that would be, can we either have some separate discussions, perhaps as part of workload planning, and kind of get to those questions, and then we know what we're providing, because we are perfectly happy to do that. Yes, they are very much operational indicators, as Jonathan said, set in quite a tight legislative regime. And Entrust are bothered about the process and to demonstrate the process, and I think that comes back to Councillor Francis's point as well about the quality of the people that work there. They are still committed to that, and Entrust is quite shy of potentially not presenting the right indicators. If we want to develop something where we have those 3-year targets, I think we've got them, but a bit more conversation about what you'd like to see so we can help that debate is fine. Thank you.
You can second, Councillor Francis. Yeah, I think that's a good idea, and I think outside of this meeting we can have those conversations to see exactly what sort of information we want on a rolling programme. Councillor Francis.
Yeah, thanks, Ian, and Jonathan, for that. You're quite right, and I've asked this question, as I've alluded to, over the years, about dividends, the structure of the company, the way it operates, due process, whether it's transparent, are we getting the right information? Is the information that we're getting correct? Is it not correct? I've asked all the, as you know, Ian, because you sat in the MTFS with me in the past, and I've asked all these questions, as did members of the opposition at the time, as you full well know. And we've never, ever had a full satisfactory answer on this, Mr. Chairman. And we need full satisfactory answers. And the proposal from Jeremy and from what you said, I totally agree, and I'll go along with Ian to set up a separate meeting to talk about this lot, and let's get to the bottom of what's going on.
Yeah, I accept that members are very passionate about this work and of interest. So, yeah, we'll make sure that we get the right information that we want to look at to make sure that we have the surety that actually they're doing what we actually want them to do. Councillor Yates.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm just very interested in listening from Councillor Pert and Councillor Francis. Obviously, I'm coming into this late with not any experience of this particular company. I agree with what Councillor Pert says, is that targets should be challenging. And if you're getting a constant 100%, then they're certainly not challenging the kind of targets which suggest that, are you unlocking the doors every morning? Yes, tick, 100%, so to speak. So that's, you know, so we need to make sure that they are challenging, because you're looking for continuous improvement. And certainly when 100% is achieved, then it's a case of folding your arms, resting on your laurels and saying, I've done as much as I can do. And obviously life's not like that. I presume this is a technical company or wholly owned. Is the company a wholly owned council company, or is it a separate private entity company completely? And the reason I say that is that obviously in the Stafford Smalllands we've got experience of setting up technical companies and similar type of companies to operate arm's length service agreements and whatever, and they set up the arrangement with other councils before they start, because the idea, the way you get efficiency is not by just subcontracting your services where you're having to pay for their profit. It's actually to have the economies of scale that the management team are managing multiple areas outside yours, so you actually get some payback for that investment. So that is a failure in that respect. And I think it's just, you know, commenting to the chair, perhaps this is something which certainly Councillor Francis's comments, there's an issue for picking up on the medium-term financial strategy, which we should perhaps invite a little bit of scrutiny on that. I'm just making a suggestion to the chair, but I don't know. But, you know, a little bit of background on how and why the company was set up and how the model could possibly work if there wasn't a broader spectrum seems an obvious one to me.
Did you want to come comment on that? On that?
Just very briefly, and this was in the Cabinet report, which is in the background papers, the County Council actually received money at the inception of Entrust rather than the other way round. So I think that does make things a little bit different. Notwithstanding anything that you have said there, and in terms of how you want to take this forward, but as Councillor Price said at the start, it has changed from very much an investment in terms of growth, and the change that we did at the break point, so it was a 20-year contract with a 10-year break. Cabinet looked at the options and around this and the amount of input it should have into running the company, etc., etc. The County Council is a minority shareholder, 49%, 51 Capita, and of course that puts all the power into Capita in terms of the direction of the company and the way it goes. So we do need to remember that. And that was looked at, and the decision was taken to make it more a service delivery 3-year rolling type contract than the partnership. So reviewing all of those things, whilst obviously it is your decision and you know, and happy to take the steer on that, that is a little bit of that's history, and we're in a different place now. So that can all be explained, and it can be explained in all the papers that have ever been produced on Entrust over the years. So you'll give me some direction in where you want to go. I think the most value is probably to Councillor Pert's point, which is in less than 2 years' time, when the council's got an opportunity to say, does it want another 3 years, is, well, what we will be looking for to say whether we should continue with those services or not. Thank you.
If we can just go back, so I think we have an understanding that we'll take away from this meeting, that we will put together more of the sort of scope that we want to see a report coming back to us in future in regard to Entrust. But going back to the papers we have in front of us now, and the recommendation is that we review the performance indicators that we have on the services remaining with Entrust, and that we provide any comments. And I think we have provided comments. So just going back to this actual report that we have in front of us here, are we happy to take the report and the information that we have here?
Just as an aside issue, Chairman, the guy who set it up in Paris is not here.
Okay, so are we happy with that we take the report and the contents noted, and we will, outside this meeting, we'll discuss at the way forwards? Yeah, all right, thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much, members. So we'll move on, if we can, to item 6, which is the Climate Change Annual Report and Action Plan. And we have County Councillor Simon Tagg, portfolio holder, is here to introduce. And I think we have a presentation as well. And I think we also have, James Cartwright, I think, is going to be joining us well. We'll have do you want a couple of minutes comfort break? Yes, please. Okay, let's just have 3 or 4 minutes comfort break to grab yourself a coffee, and then we'll convene back at, say, 1:30, please. Thank you. Okay, folks, we're about to go back live. So notice we haven't got Jill, but here's Jill probably now. Yes, lovely. So we've moved on to item 6, which is the Climate Change Annual Report and Action Plan. We've got Councillor Simon Tagg, Cabinet Member for Environment, Infrastructure and Climate Change, to deliver that, along with James Cartwright, who is the Sustainability Manager. Councillor Tagg.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon almost. Good morning, members of the committee. Yes, I'm going to do the introduction. I'm going to hand over to James, who's got some slides. James Cartwright, who you've met before at this committee, is our Sustainability Officer. And thank you, Mr Chairman, for bringing this item again. I think it's a really key item for the Council, our Climate Change Annual Report and Climate Change Action Plan. And we've made significant strides this year since we declared that climate emergency in 2019 as well, and I'm pleased to report a headline of 50% reduction in the County Council's carbon emissions. The County Council's commitment to addressing climate change, which is a core priority in our strategic plan, and we strive to make Staffordshire more sustainable, and we're well on the way to doing that, as I've said, with that 50% headline reduction. Now, the report refers to 4 documents, as I've just talked about: our annual climate change progress report, our Climate Change Action Plan version 3, and also there's the risk registers and the community impact assessment. The annual report tracks our progress towards becoming net zero by 2050 and also highlights and celebrates the progress that the Council has made, particularly over the last year, but of course since, as I say, since 2019, working with our partners in the districts and boroughs and also staff across this authority, working towards that goal of net zero. The report notes significant reductions in carbon emissions, as I say, and that is 900 tonnes of CO2 from 2021 to 2022 and a further 2.6 thousand from 2022 to 23. And that allows us to report that overall 50% reduction in emissions since we started this mission with the climate change declaration that was supported by everybody on the council at the time and was replicated by most councils across the country. Key highlights from the report are the project to the Kingston Centre, particularly refurbishing the primary school with 795,000 funding from the Public Sector Decarbonation Fund. This was 6 air source heat pumps, high insulation levels and solar PV installations on the roof. And that's expected to save 150 tonnes of carbon emissions annually. So you can see what we can do there on the buildings that we have as a county council to reduce those carbon emissions. The council's highways department has run a pilot project switching to HVO, hydrogenated vegetable oil, biofuel, for the gritting fleet and for forklift trucks. This has saved 60 tonnes of carbon in 3 months compared with conventional diesel, and also a decrease in pollution levels by 84%. So you can see another action which we can do with our entire fleet is move them to HVO in the first instance, possibly electricity, and hopefully hydrogen when the technology comes up will take a whole swathe of carbon emissions out of the county council's column, so to speak. The report provides details of the Climate Change Members Fund and that continual community engagement which we're having. Every councillor in this room has obviously been involved in that through the money that they get as a local county councillor. And that's set out in the report and shows 73 grants which were awarded to a total of over £85,000 to community groups, schools and charities. Projects included again this year LED lights, tree planting, increasing insulation and encouraging active travel through installation of bike racks at schools, colleges, etc. and in community buildings. There's a list of the distribution by district and borough in the report if you wish to look at that for the breakdown. Last year saw over £5 million awarded to 422 properties in Staffordshire, installing a total of 550 energy efficient measures through the Staffordshire Warmer Home Scheme, helping towards that overall reduction of carbon emissions across the whole county. And it's recognised through the wider partnership that we've set up, and we lead with the Staffordshire districts and boroughs through the Staffordshire Sustainability Board, that collaboration exploration of opportunities to reduce carbon emissions by working together is really bearing fruits as well. And we've got a joint plan to tackle climate change across the county, and the board is committed again to 10 pledges, including publishing carbon reduction achievements annually, and we also hold quarterly meetings in public so that people can see the progress that all the councils are making towards that goal of carbon neutrality. The second part, of course, is the Climate Change Action Fund with the revision 3, which we had before us today. And that's a massively important part of the strategy as we now look forward, particularly in the small slot to 2025, in 5 key areas on carbon reduction, air quality, natural environment and waste, and also behavioural change. The action plan is developed and has an input from right across this authority, officers from across the authority, which shows to me that now climate change is embedded and tackling climate change is embedded across our authority. And I'll be seeking the committee's views today on that action plan, and also draw your attention to the programme roadmap at the end, which shows the progress so far and shows that we intend to, in solid steps, reach that net zero in 2050, and the need for obviously offsetting as we get further, and that's through tree planting and other environmental improvements which can achieve that. The report also has a risk register, vitally important that we measure the risks along the way, and as we're achieving this, it helps us to track and mitigate those risks as we move forward, and really emphasising number 19 on it, which is the importance of sequestration, I can never say that word, which is that offsetting activities of the residual carbon emissions which we were not going to be able to remove. And I'm pleased to see the report from the Climate Change Working Group later on the agenda, which is helping us on the way to do that, and look forward to the report being received by Cabinet in due course. So, Mr Chairman, we value the committee's input on the Climate Change Action Plan to shape its final version before I take it through to formal Cabinet in November 2023. I think we've made, as I've said, significant progress on our commitment to tackle climate change with that 50% headline reduction in emissions, but we're not going to be resting on our laurels. We have another ambitious action plan, as you see before you here, and as I say, I value the committee's input on that to shape it as we take it forward. Thank you, Mr Chair. I'll hand over now to James for his brief presentation.
Morning, everyone. Just make sure. Yeah, okay. Great. I've got half a dozen slides only. I just wanted to delve. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it is that. Yeah. Just half a dozen slides. Just wanted to pick out a few bits that Simon probably hasn't delved a little bit deeper, and give you the opportunity to really ask me questions, should you want any clarification. Hopefully the documents you got in front of you are quite comprehensive. I think they were well received last year, and we've built on that this year. And first, I'm just going to cover the first couple of slides on the annual report. The graph that's in front of you is figure 2. This was really just showing our 50% reduction since 2019, and we declared climate emergency declaration, and just breaks it down by area, quite high level area, and that forward motion that we've seen. You'll see a big reduction from our electricity use, our street lighting and ITS equipment. But going forward, and this is a theme that transport, the way we heat our buildings and our waste operations are going to be where those activities and operations are really a lot harder to decarbonise going forward. Where we've seen real drops over the past 12 months is in our energy use. I think this has really been driven a little bit harder by the high energy prices that we all encountered due to the Ukraine-Russia conflict. Within our corporate buildings, our gas use went down by 10% last year, and within our maintained schools went down by 22%. Everyone trying to save a little bit of money. We're trying really hard there to make that stick, send out positive communications so that we can realise that saving going forward. I think Simon's also already mentioned the HVO use within our highway fleet. That again is being rolled out through our HWRC and library fleet throughout this year. The Sustainability Board, again, just sticking with the annual report, I think I've been to quite a lot of meetings and conventions over the past 12 months, and it feels like we really are making headway. The collaborative nature of the Sustainability Board is allowing us to develop strategies which are county-wide, which is really important. No point in doing things twice, do things once. So the ones I'd just like to highlight is, first one is the adaptation strategy that went through our cabinet last month. And that overarches how we adapt to our changing climate. It'll take 18 months for us to deliver our plan, or pull our plan together, but it'll link into things that we're already doing. So things like, I think in March, again through Cabinet, went through a flood management strategy. We've already done that work, so it's about just realising those things. I'd also like to try and work closer with other public sector bodies like the NHS, and we are reaching out to do that as well. Moving on to an EV infrastructure strategy, again delivered through the Sustainability Board, and we've also leveraged fund through the Levi Fund for Staffordshire of £4.5 million. That's towards public charging infrastructure, where people haven't got access through driveways and things like that. That forms part, we've come together with Midlands Connect, a consortium of local authorities across the Midlands area, and a total funding for EV infrastructure there of £17 to £18 million. Also through the Sustainability Board, there's a theme here, is a joint communications delivery plan. Again, we want to engage with our residents and with our businesses with that same theme, that same messaging coming through again and again. This year we had a Carbon Bubble Roadshow. Don't know how many people went, but that was really positively well received as well. I'd just like to mention the consultation. We've gone out for a consultation. We're pulling together all the final bits there, so we're not ready to expose that at the moment, but it was completed consultation by 3,453 participants, which was our third highest consultation for the County Council. There was one thing I'd just really like to publicise there is 40% of those respondents said that local councils are their first go-to trusted source for information on climate change. National government wasn't so positive, but it really shows the sort of influential area that we work in, and we are a trusted organisation. Just sticking, final slide with the annual report, continued good work, quite salient flooding. I think we've all had a fair share. Sorry, I'm working off two screens. Flooding, within that slide, it does note where we're going in the sort of coming 12 months, but it's an area of work that we're going to work on with this adaptation plan I mentioned earlier, and linking in with strategy works that we've already done. And on to the action plan. I think Simon's just articulated that this is a revision, but it is ambitious. We are pushing, not resting on our laurels, and although we've achieved 50%, we are going to deliver at pace. Our core areas of focus still around the key areas of buildings, transport and waste, but it really does feel as if we're getting our own house in order. There are a few bits that you'll see, and I'll just elaborate slightly on those. It feels like, because we've got our own house more in order, that we should look externally in those areas of influence that we need to start to push on. Certainly, as we start to decarbonise, certainly within our buildings, we're going to need the green economy and green skills, and that availability of skills within Staffordshire to do things like retrofitting heat pumps within our buildings. That currently, in the whole green economy, is slow to start, so it feels like we need to step into that space. And action point CR13 just emphasises that, and we want to try and develop both the supply chain and green skills. Also, action BC06 just talks a little bit about how we want to step into the area of active travel more and school drop-offs, reduction of not maybe our footprint, but people travelling to schools to drop off children. So again, another activity that we want to start to influence on. That'll be tied in again with our joint comms activity through the Sustainability Board. So we'll be messaging county-wide. The penultimate slide really is here, just again celebrating the good work that we've done. The orange bars on the left-hand side show that downward motion and that realisation of that 50% reduction. The blue line heading off is our calculation of where we'll be going forward with various technologies becoming available, or the costs sort of coming down so we can use them. And you'll see also a grey line there as well. 2050, we're not going to get to net zero without some sort of sequestration or offsetting. If it's nature-based solutions, then, and planting trees is one of those, trees take time to grow. So it's going to take us 20 years to realise that sequestration to hit 2050. As Simon said, I think there's a report coming from the working group later, so I won't dwell too long on that. That element was highlighted by Simon and is in the risk register. The other risk is mainly cost-based. I would hope with time, technologies, as they're embraced, as we've seen with solar panels, come down in price, and we're able to capitalise on that. And with that, I'll offer open to questions.
Councillor Francis.
Thank you, Chairman. Just before I have to dash off, 2 or 3 things on this lot. I've got solar panel farms applications coming in, all in loads in my division at the minute. They're going to build them on greenfield sites, which in my view is good agricultural land. It's B2 for growing crops. The farmers are going to get a fortune out of it. They're going to, one landowner is going to be paid £12,000 an acre per annum. It'll all come off subsidies from the government, and it'll all come off subsidies from our electricity bills. And we're going to import millions of plastic panels from China, who've already got a lake half the size of Wales with contaminants in from producing solar panels. It's not that environmentally friendly, that's number one. Number two is if you're living in a terraced house in the middle of town, for example in Stafford in Corporation Street, how are you going to plug a blooming EV in? Because you can't do it. You're going to run an extension from outside the front door or what? It's impractical. And the third thing is, particularly in Stafford, Stafford is a massive building site at the minute. It's just a house building site, the whole of Stafford. And it's basically, most of Stafford's on a floodplain. And you've got runoff. When you build houses, you're tarmacking roads, you're tarmacking driveways, you've got roofs, all the water's running off. My house was built 60 years ago, and all of the rainwater from the house runs into soakaways in the ground. They stopped doing that donkey's years ago, and it runs into main drains. So you've got those 3 anomalies there are going to cause us serious issues, and it's not soluble in the present day and age. With that, I'll leave you. You can say what...
Thank you, Councillor Francis. We'll make sure the responses get back to you through the minutes of this meeting. But thank you for your attendance this morning. Thank you. Do we want to respond to that, Councillor?
Yeah, for the public watching and for other members. Yeah, I think 3 valid points that are raised there by Councillor Francis. I think on the solar panel thing, there are planning legislation that around setting up of solar panels, etc., and use of land, etc., and the amount of a period of time, a minimum period, a maximum period of time, etc. So I think that can be covered through that. I think EV, another valid point, how are we going to connect all of these terrace houses? I don't think we really have the full answer to that at the moment, but there are community charging points. There could be potential for using, lamp posts and other street furniture, but we're not there yet, and I can't admit that we're there yet, but we are beginning to make an impact on the wider issue of EV. And then on for flooding, I think quite right, all of the driveways that are taken out, are put in place of gardens, etc. in houses are creating more runoff into the drainage. That just means we need the correct drainage and the clean drainage and the clear drainage to ensure that the water does find its way into the correct water courses. But I don't know, James, if you've got anything further to add?
I think they're all points that concern us, aren't they? And certainly with the EV infrastructure strategy and the flood management strategy, those are areas that we are currently working in and trying to resolve, for the benefit of Staffordshire.
Councillor Yates.
Yes, it's a pity he's gone, really, isn't it? No, I suppose. Yeah, I mean, the EV charging points, I think that's just, it really requires some mythos, because the reality of it is, and I don't want to sound facetious, but neither of you got a diesel pump outside your terrace house. The reality is that if you're doing 8,000 miles a year, and it's an average EV car with the current technology, you're having to charge it up the back end of 2 weeks, every 2 weeks. So a lot of it will be opportunistic charging. I know there's also a direction going down to sort of look at, you know, trickle charging from lampposts and pop-ups and things like that, you know, but they will always have the issue of not being there for an absolute individual. But the fear of not being able to charge will dissipate as both government stroke council-led investments like the Levi Consortium and also the private sector taking up the fact that there's an opportunity there to repurpose petrol forecourts or drive-through Costa coffees and whatever will resolve that. But I think there's that range panic which has a mindset of certain people that unless you charge every day you might end up in the wilderness somewhere, which just isn't the reality. You know, we have that range anxiety sometimes when the yellow light comes on and you're on the motorway and you're thinking how far's the next service station or do a pull off. So you know, you've just got to get a sense of proportionment and a sense of reality there. Coming back to the report, the one thing which does concern me is that is the HVO thing. I mean, you know, the source of HVO, a lot of it is dominated by soya production, and there's a question on the sustainability of that. But putting that to the side, one of the advantages of the investment which is being put in for the conversion of lighting, which includes the street lighting, to LEDs, is that yes, there's a capital investment, but there's a tremendous long-term revenue saving, both not just in terms of energy consumed itself, because the low energy light bulbs, but in terms of maintenance, they tend to be very low maintenance light bulbs as well, so the reliability helps, and they're very much sealed units, so they're a bit more protected against water ingress and whatever. But the thing about HVO is that it is currently more expensive and more volatile than normal diesel, and that can't be a good sustainable thing, and we've got to do work to help that in some respects. And I think one of the things which we could and should potentially be looking at, and this is something which I'd just like your comments on, is, and I include the districts and the boroughs in that because we've got a two-tier council system when it comes to operating vehicles and things, is whether we can actually almost operate as own entity as a bunkering business to have a common supply and then have the economy of scale and actually cutting out a lot of the wheeling and dealing, so to speak, because certainly the fuel which we would use collectively across the council could potentially warrant having a couple of effectively HVO depots which are operated by yourselves, or certainly with, you know, we touched on Technical companies early on, something like that, and perhaps a consortium the same as the Levi consortium. But I think longer term we haven't got to see HVO as a silver bullet. It's short term, isn't? We've got to look at the other things, and likewise hydrogen. We haven't got to be in this. Well, you'll be all right by 2030 because we can grasp this thing which currently doesn't exist. So we've got to have eyes wide open when we're talking about these things. But the HVO thing itself is something which I think we do need to look at very closely.
No, I agree on HVO, and of course with my district hat on, we've moved all of the vehicles in Newcastle Borough's fleet over to HVO, but there's been a cost to that has actually yet to be borne. But the reductions in carbon are, you know, up to 90% relating to each vehicle, and overall that is a massive saving as we're charting our way there, as we're charting our way here towards a net zero target. But I think I've and James will probably comment in a minute, I've been raising the issue of can we act as a consortium, bulk buying of this stuff, or even, you know, sort of engender a plant or something within Staffordshire that we could actually use. But I do agree, and I said in my interim comments, that it is I think an interim measure as we move towards more, you know, whether that's electric, and I don't think really that is the end product as well as it when it comes to sustainable transport, whether that is hydrogen and the technology catching up. But HVO is plugging that gap at the moment, but it does cost more, and that's why, you know, the pilot of we had a very good discussion at Cabinet about whether we should go on the pilot for HVO, and it's felt that it's reducing our carbon emissions in the short term, getting us to where we want to go. But also it's that sort of symbol and standard that we want to be having vehicles and gritters and other things that are transversing the county that aren't creating pollution and carbon emissions. So I think that's it. But I've just asked James, because obviously I've been pressing you for ages to try and get some sort of consortium, because all the districts are moving towards it now, aren't they? Other authorities too. Is there any scope for that? We'll see.
Yeah, I certainly would agree that HVO is a transitional fuel. You know, it's not the answer, but in a sort of embryonic marketplace where hydrogen probably isn't established, the vehicle manufacturers are still very much fossil fuel based. It does plug that gap. Within the next 6 months, as the County Council, some of our highways gritting fleet are on HVO. Our BIF fleet within the HWRC contracts, some of our library vehicles are also on it. Within the HWRC network, we're going to be over the next 3 months making sure that we've got, I think, 14 or 16 depots have got tanks on. They will all be converted to HVO so that the County Council's fleet, wherever it may be, can fill up. I think total holding capacity there will be somewhere around 35,000 litres of HVO. So certainly if the districts and boroughs are then thinking about it as well, is there an opportunity for us to buy a big lorry load of the fuel, go round and top up all the tanks? Absolutely, I would say so. I don't think it's going to make it a comparable price to diesel, but certainly bulk buying will be cheaper. So we'll certainly investigate that into the future.
I think probably some of the nervousness from some of the local authorities around the fact that it's a cost. But I think we have to understand that in order to make a difference to climate change, there is going to be a cost for authorities. There will be a financial implication for all authorities. So anything we can do to reduce that financial liability for authorities is a step in the right direction on that side. Councillor Pert.
Thank you, Chair. I would like just to start off, I've got 6 points I want to make. The first one is just wanted to note the comments of James in relation to achieving the 2050 date. And I think that's a really good positioning point for where we are today, but also for the next report that's coming forwards. And that it might seem a long way away, but actually if we don't start the journey soon enough, particularly when we talk about the investments that need to be made, then I think we miss the point. The second point I wanted to make was about street lighting. And I'm just going to make a pun here. I've actually seen it happening on the ground because, you know, I'm seeing these LED lights and it's nice to be able to demonstrate to the general public that actually big, large programs like changing every street light within Staffordshire is happening and is taking effect. And actually they shine a much clearer, cleaner light in any case. But it's nice to be able to demonstrate activity on the ground. I note the point in terms of EV charging policy, but I think it has been slow when you talk about on-street charging in outside of the major conurbations. And I think we do need to have that policy. We do need to have that clarity. And I would hope that is fast-tracked because no one's making the investment in the towns and smaller settlements, and that does need to happen, whether that is private partnerships or using public land. But you know, there is a role that the county should be leading on from a highways perspective that, in my view, is just not happening. I think the other thing that isn't happening is planning policy. And I talk about that in two different ways. One, there's the showcasing of the work that's gone on in terms of flooding. And frankly, we're dealing with some of the, and Councillor Francis made the point about flooding due to house building. But actually some of the knock-on effects of building lots of houses or building in the wrong place, like on the top of the hill and then wondering why the people further down the hill are flooded out. The answer is it's blindingly obvious, and there is insignificant work that is being done by planning authorities and infrastructure companies to stop some of this natural flooding that they are causing and amplifying. And it is not just climate change. It is climate change that is a factor here, but actually planning policy is creating some of these problems. The other thing in terms of planning policy, and I was a great advocate under the previous administration at a local level of actually forcing developers to build carbon neutral homes. It's inexpensive to do, better to do it now rather than retrofit houses the moment somebody buys a brand new house and puts the key in the door and then wakes up to the fact fact they've got a £10,000 cost. The developer does it, it is significantly less than that, and you can actually charge more for the homes. So I think there is a role of influencing planning policy that just needs to happen a lot faster. There are other authorities in planning terms who are doing this already, and we need to see that coming forward in terms of local plans. I absolutely agree there's a shortage of skills, but there's a chicken and egg. And we've got to encourage those people to invest in getting those skills, because actually there may not be the full demand at this moment in time. So I think there is a chicken and egg that we need to investigate and do more work on. And doing things like showcasing herbal leys and some of the other things that other areas are doing, whether it's in agriculture or whether it's in forestry or whether it's in just day-to-day operations in terms of the HVO discussion, I think is something that we really need to do. Let's centralise some of this knowledge so that other people can learn faster and pick up from what we've done. And then my final comment just really relates to central government. Government needs to set an expectation. And having the same end date, but less clarity in terms of those steps on the route, I don't think helps other people invest. And I think the council, in demonstrating what it's done through this annual report, I think the report is really positive. It's positive progress. Yes, there's more to do, but I think that it's a good showcase of the direction of travel that others need to follow by. And so we should welcome the report, should welcome the work, but actually it would be more helpful if government also did the same and actually very clearly identified their interim targets and equally those things that will change from a policy point of view, because then it allows others round them, in local government, for example, to be able to follow the direction of travel from central government.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. I agree with almost all those points you've made. I think particularly just picking out a few, the planning policy is really important, I think, when it comes to, say, new homes and carbon zero homes. And the Leaders Board, which is made up of all the leaders of the county and the districts, it's got a work stream to do that, to try and harmonise local plans, because it's no good if one authority goes for net zero house building and then the next authority doesn't, because all the house builders will then initially go for the cheaper version for them, but not for the people who actually buy the houses. Jeremy, you're quite right. They have to retrofit later. Is that we get a uniform approach across the county, so that's taking place. On the EV, I think, again, I think it's more onus on the district to tell you what's going on, I think, because there are district plans attached to each of this, the strategy for EV has got now district plans. I believe all the district cabinets have had presentations on that. I think that is pushed out in the districts to scrutinies and backbench members to show what's planned in each district. And that just doesn't include the town centres, it also includes some of the outer line areas, how they will be connected. And the team at the County Council has done a really good job working with their district counterparts to bring that together. Street lighting, completely agree with you, and if anybody has had the honour and particularly of looking up to the sky and looking at the northern lights the last couple of nights, Saturday and Sunday night, that aiding seeing that is because of the new street lighting, with it being more focused on the ground, being less luminous, actually, so you see more of the night sky. That's another addition, but also the energy efficiency, and also, as you say, that more focused light onto the ground, where in the past it would go out into the whatever, and also the cost saving is massive as well. And I'm pleased to say that the Cabinet in its future plans has agreed to a phase 2 for the PFI street lighting to be changed to LED, so that will continue that track on replacing more and more street lights, so we get more and more efficiencies and more carbon reductions from our street lighting. James, any further things, or covered everything? No. Okay, thank you, Jeremy.
That's fine. Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you very much. Mine's a bit of an observation, but there is a couple of maybe questions in there. Thank you for the report. As has already been said, it's a positive report and a lot's going on in the report, to be quite honest. I think that we're doing all we can internally as a county council, and I know district and boroughs are doing the best they can with their organisations. In-house, basically, is what I'm talking of. I think the difficulty we're going to have is selling it out there to the general public, is one point I wanted to make. I'm really pleased that we had the Climate Change Community Fund, because I thought that was excellent, because I know in my case it involves schools with young people, which makes them take pride in what's going on with climate change, etc. if there's any chance of sort of continuing anything like that, that would be good, but I know it's all about finance as well. You've already mentioned about the planning and development, but I think, as you rightly said, it's been picked up by leaders of the authorities, district and boroughs, the planning authorities basically. My concern basically, I think, and it will be a concern for the residents out there, is the waste, your general waste in your home. And we need some clarification or clear guidance, I think, on that. Maybe as well from government on what is the next step. We've just got used to having certain bins for and bags and all the rest of it for certain items. And I think it's selling that now again. Will we stick to the same kind of things we're using now, or will we have to move into something different within the homes of people? And it's that we're going to have to sell, because I think they play a really important part on the climate change programme, and particularly in waste, because there's an awful lot of it. So I don't know whether there's any questions in there you might be able to answer, but I think, you know, I'm concerned about the waste issues, because I do know that is up and coming, that we need to sort of look into locally. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Perry. Three good points there. I think on the comms, as you're aware, obviously the Sustainability Board has its comms plans, it's had its consultation that will be obviously coming to the next SSB meeting and then made public, and I think probably come back to scrutiny here in Cabinet, because as has been said earlier, we need to know what people think about climate change and where they think we can help them to achieve, because it's all about people also achieving, isn't it, in their own homes and their daily lives and everything they do. So I think that's really good, and I think that tribute to the districts and boroughs. We have the Vice Chair of the Sustainability Board sitting here, Councillor Yates. We've had new membership this year with the change of controls have happened, and I can say it's everybody is committed to moving forward together, and we've seen some good results on that. Climate Change Action Fund, yeah, great. I think, you know, as finance allowing and Ian Parry and Cabinet allowing it, I think we should still be putting money into that. Really too, and you've seen the benefits as you're seeing in your ward. And I must say, you probably have heard that Newcastle on the Line won the overall category for Britain in Bloom, overall UK winners, and part of that was through our sustainability offer, and I funded through my community fund a green wall at the bus station. I was joined by other county councillors to make it into a big scheme, and that was actually highlighted as one of the innovations that led to the good decision of making Newcastle the overall UK winner of Britain in Bloom. But the county council funded that through its local community fund, and that just shows, and we've actually can't release the data yet, we've had Keele University looking at the impact of that green wall, and initially we're seeing some reductions in the emissions and particulates because of that green wall, which shows this is a pilot. If we can roll it out elsewhere and use Climate Change Community Fund and other areas to do that, you can make some real differences. And that waste agenda and waste reduction agenda, I completely agree with you, Kath. And of course the government have announced finally some stuff in the last couple of weeks on food waste and collections. And I think we need to really evaluate that as we move forward on our joint waste strategy with the districts and the boroughs. And again, the Sustainability Board is a place where that will be aired and viewed. And of course, there is a public meeting of that will come up in a couple of months where we'll present that to the people of the county. But I think waste reduction, you know, minimising that goes to waste through reuse is another way, and that circular economy which we can get going within Staffordshire are all ways to reduce waste. Thank you, Chair.
Perry, yes, come back.
Sorry, can I just come back on one thing? I omitted to say that regarding district and boroughs, some are going to be able to do things a little bit slower probably than others because of the demographics of the areas they are, like such as Staffordshire Moorlands, South Staffs, I need to make that clear, because we are villages rather than a town or an urban population. So things might, I'm thinking of the plug-in, you know, that kind of thing. It's going to be more difficult to actually, unless it's new builds, of course, to do that as opposed to the more urban places. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Mine's just a quick one. You know the Climate Fund, the monies, I don't know if there's enough money in the pot to like extend that, because I could have probably spent mine twice over, and I ended up borrowing from colleagues in Cannock and vice versa, because we ran out of money because of the people asking for it. So I'm wondering if that could be looked at, or if there are members that haven't spent their funding, perhaps it could go to members that are spending it and can be seen to be spending it.
Good point. I think I'll take that back to Cabinet, obviously, to see if there is more money, but I think that sort of spending and spreading the money around within the districts between members, some members are getting a lot of applications, some aren't. So, I mean, we need to make sure, that money has been allotted and it is all spent. So I think there needs to be some mechanism for, as we're approaching a deadline, if there's a member with a lot of money left, whether they can then begin to share that with other members who have spent all their money. It's really pleasing to hear that you are, you're having a lot of, applications in, which is really good. And I'll certainly take it back to Cabinet about more funding going into that, but I can't guarantee it, of course, given the restraints we're under.
I think just on the Climate Action Fund, I think what it's done two things. I think, first of all, I think it shows to our electorate that we're really serious about this and we want to make a difference. And secondly, I think it's given the opportunity to members to better understand the applications that are coming, actually what they're about. And we've had to do that through the application process. So I think that's really good. I also believe there's probably a place for districts and boroughs to play here as well. And if they could somehow identify funding within their local authorities that could actually mirror the type of funding that the county has done in some way, I think, again, that would help districts and boroughs to engage with their communities if they can see that actually, yeah, the district and borough are also looking to communicate and also putting funds aside to actually do some of this work in doing it. So.
No, I agree. And the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, which of course average districts across the county have had £4 million in UK Shared Prosperity Fund. Some of them have put that into environmental improvement schemes and funding, etc., to businesses, to community groups. So there is happening. But again, that is whether that will be replenished by the government going forward. We may lose that in the future. But I certainly agree it can be, pots of funding can be put together to create a bigger result, can't it, for the local community.
So, is there anybody else? Councillor Clements.
I think it was James that mentioned the climate change survey. I did mention this in the previous item. When are we going to get any sort of analysis from that? I know it's just finished, and a report, because, as I said previously, we know what we want to do. Us in this room know what we want to do locally, but we don't know what they want us to do outside, and I think that's really important that we're on the right track, because somebody out there might have had a really good idea and we all go, oh yeah, I didn't think of that. So I just wondered when that analysis is going to be available and a report for us to pick through and have a look at what the people outside want us to do. Oh, and just quickly, Nigel is correct on EV. I've driven an EV for 3 years, and you do get that EV anxiety on range, but it dissipates once you've been driving for a year, because you know your vehicle, you know when you're going to be able to charge. And I know Councillor Francis mentioned about terraced houses and how they can plug in. There are ways, there's lampposts on every road, maybe not so much in the rural areas, but there are ways of doing it, and it's down to each county council whether they accept that you can have a cable that goes from your house, but then it goes in a trench, like you have to apply for a disabled bay or a H-hashings or something like that. So it can be entrenched and a rubber cover being put on it, so it's still flat with the pavement.
On the consultation, that's going to come to the next Stafford Sustainability Board meeting a week on Monday, I think it is, and then it was actually the Sustainability Board's consultation, so it's theirs, but as James said, it was managed by the County Council, and it was the third biggest consultation that we've ever carried out. And usually those consultations about what are you going to do about country parks, or are you going to do something about them, it's usually about either potential cuts or changes to services. This was asking people what they thought about climate change, what they thought the priorities were, and a massive response. But you're quite right, we've, the County Council and all local authorities in the county only account for 2% of carbon emissions. We've got plans here to deal with that 2%. The rest of it, created through everything else that we do, residents, houses, businesses, everything else, needs to be tackled by 2050 as well. And this consultation will help inform how we do that. And you're quite right. I think what needs to happen is it needs to come back probably to a scrutiny committee, not sure which one it is, whether it's yours, Councillor Clements, or this one, for it to be drilled into in more detail. And also I'm sure Cabinet here will be very interested in seeing the outcome of that as well, as will each of the districts and boroughs who've taken part in it. Thank you.
I think that analysis drill down can actually be done cross committees. because it affects all of us.
Anybody else now before we go back to the recommendations? Okay, so the recommendations we had was to review the climate change action plan, note the progress that had been made and make recommendations. And I think there are a couple of recommendations that we can put into that to help with that. B was to review the draft climate change action plan, revision 3, again making suggestions going forward. And then C was to note the risk register has been reviewed and the RAG ratings updated. Are members all happy with those recommendations? Lovely, thank you very much indeed, thank you. So we will now swiftly move on to item 7, which is the Climate Change Working Group, Carbon Sequestration and Woodland Creation for Net Zero. So, Councillor Thompson, are you going to introduce it?
I am, but I'm going to be very quick because I
you?
realise
Okay.
we're on
Okay.
limited time, aren't we?
You carry on.
Take your time. No, my tummy's rumbling really badly. Okay, thank you. The working group carried out this work on behalf of the Corporate Scrutiny and Overview Committee, and our findings hopefully will feed into the Cabinet climate change work. We started looking at how to reduce our carbon and how to take carbon out of the air. The word we used is sequestration. Is that the correct word? There we go. We looked wider than the immediate issue, and our findings and suggestions for the future to approach are captured in our report. In a moment, I'm going to ask Debs to go through a few slides for us. However, Scrutiny had to look at the issues, but also had the opportunity to look at the bigger picture and the horizon scan. I do think this is a good report. And I would ask committee to get behind recognising the pace to move forward. If that's possible, please. I know Debs is going to go through the slides, Deb. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. So the report, which has been circulated, there's quite a lot of detail in there, which I don't intend to go through. You've already had the annual report. And the first slide in our presentation, we recognise that the Council's doing a lot, it's doing really well in its efforts to reduce its carbon emissions to fulfil the Council's commitment to reach net zero by 2050. But that we also needed to mitigate the carbon emissions from our carbon footprint that cannot be reduced through operational change. Carbon capture is the purpose that we started to look at. We needed to mitigate this residual carbon by carbon capture and storage. And the slide shows how we can take carbon from the air and store underground. Trees naturally do that for us. So what we looked at was the need to mitigate the carbon emissions from the carbon footprint that cannot be reduced. Sorry, I've just clicked on. Our carbon capture is well proven, but as yet there's nowhere on the planet that is storing carbon in the long term underground. It's not working very well. Bar a research project in Iceland, but that's a long way away from us being able to do that in Staffordshire. Carbon storage is in its embryonic industry. It's not just proven, and therefore we took the decision to look at technologies that exist today to mitigate the SEC's emissions. These are all nature-based through the wetting of peatlands that have dried out, or through land use change that sequestered significant amounts of carbon and importantly delivers wider benefits. Both options will have the benefit of mitigating our carbon emissions and also contributing significantly to our nature declarations too. The group identified a site of best practice within Staffordshire and the borders of Staffordshire, the Norbury estate, and we arranged a visit there in June this year. As detailed in the report, we visited because they have planted 450,000 trees over 12 years. And this is something we aim to do, to plant more trees, to mitigate the 100% of SCC residual emissions. But to do that, we'd need to plant 2.5 million trees over the next 7 years, which is significant amounts of carbon need to be sequestered. Trees take 20 years to be able to sequester carbon, as mentioned by James in the annual report. It is achievable, but we need to take into account the scale and pace needed, and the time for action has to be now. The holistic benefits of woodland creation is also outlined in the report. We received a presentation by the Forestry Commission, which confirmed the wider benefits that planting forests can have. There's a lot to support both technically and financially to help us realise this change and opportunities that it could bring, and they're outlined on the slide attached and within the report. The working group highlighted the importance of thinking to the future and the holistic benefits of woodland creation for Staffordshire. This slide is really important. The National Forest Company came to present, and they started planting trees in the 1990s. So their presentation provided a crystal ball to the working group of what is achievable and what can be, what complements each other. To plant a number of trees, you would need people to look after the trees. And I think that slide actually shows that 9.5 million trees have been planted. Our target's 2.5 million trees in 7 years, so there's a really good insight into what we can achieve and timelines and methodologies that they used. The working group welcomed this slide, which demonstrates the wider benefits we could realise within a Staffordshire forest. Thousands of new rural jobs, enhanced visitor economy, enhanced access to the countryside, for health agenda, for health and well-being, for family activities, tourism. There is so much that can come from creating a forest in Staffordshire. It demonstrates that this is a win for carbon, a win for health, and a win for the economy. So this slide is a vision of what is possible. This shows some of the opportunity, and the working group recommendations aim to provide some of the pieces to the jigsaw for Staffordshire looking forwards to the future. And the final slide that I've put before you is a map which demonstrates low sensitivity areas for planting in Staffordshire. The red areas are rural portfolio, that's County Council rural portfolio. Some of the SCC property portfolio should be or could be considered in moving forward in our woodland creation. And finally, I've put questions, but really I think the working group has done such a lot of work. It started by looking at an issue, but has had the opportunity to think outside the box, to hear from experts and see best practice, to consider the bigger picture for Staffordshire, looking at what's working well elsewhere and being ambitious in the recommendations the working group want to bring forward. They asked committee to recognise the need for pace to move forward, and also recommend that this report is submitted to Cabinet for consideration and for them to respond to this committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Can I just, from the Chair, just personally thank the working group for the work they've done. Excellent report under the expert chairmanship of...
Can I add my thanks?
You can.
The team that turned up, and I'd like to say that there were specific people that didn't respond to the meeting. They were asked and they were invited, but the team that turned up and the input that they gave, I know Jeremy played a big part in getting Norbury, and the officers' input was very valuable to this. And there is people on the group that are not on the group that joined the committee as well, and their input was valuable as well, because I know at the start when we first had this working group, they wanted to achieve so many different things, and we realised quite quickly that it was unachievable. So we have as a group narrowed it down to this one area that we can have an input in and we can see a resolution to it. So I do appreciate everybody that's members and staff, because James, Deb, Sarah, Simon have all been very, very good in what we've achieved. So thank you.
Yeah. I echo your points, Councillor Thompson. It's really thanks for all that. I think what it does do, on a wider picture, I think what it does do, we need to ensure that when we set up these working groups, that the people who are attached to them actually want to play an active part, and if not, we need to be bold at the beginning to remove them from it and see if anybody else actually wants to join, because we've seen this in a number of working groups where people are listed but actually haven't attended, so we do need to do that. I've got 3 speakers, Councillor Pert, Councillor Perry and Councillor Yates. So, Councillor Pert.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to start off by paying tribute to the Chair of the working group's leadership in this matter, and equally for the involvement of long-standing friends of mine at Byfors and Norbury Park, who frankly are world leaders in what they are doing and changing people's perceptions and taking the science further forward. And I also want to pay tribute to the expert witness testimony and subject matter experts of people at the Forestry Commission and the National Forest, as well as some of our own officers as well. This is a bold move. Make no mistake, this is a very bold move and demonstrates a determination and commitment to achieving net zero. But, as my mum would say, you can never make an omelette without breaking eggs. There are a couple of things within the recommendations. First of all, we're talking about managed woodlands, not just randomly planted trees, and managed so that the trees are managed so that they grow straight, and there are things that can be done for that. And the reason that's important is that wood is a crop, and trying to get people to see wood in a different way, I think, is a really important thing. And you know, if you travel the country and go into Wales and see some of the woodlands in Wales and Scotland and see how they're managed, then clearly I think that is a good point of reference. I am staggered that 85% of the country's requirement for wood is brought in from overseas. When you talk about sustainability, when you talk about the impact of climate change, bringing in stuff that actually we should be producing ourselves and can be producing ourselves, to me, is an anathema. When you see wood as a crop, you actually say, we're not changing the use of agricultural land, we're just varying the use into a different agricultural crop. I have to say, this is one of my most proud moments on the County Council, because I'm proud of the recommendation and the work that's been done, because actually it shows vision and shows delivery against a really critical issue for us and for our residents. And I would recommend support of this proposal, but also a secondary proposal, which is the opportunity for the working group chair to present the report to Cabinet in due course. Thank you, Chair.
Just drop that one right at the end there. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thank you for that, Councillor Pert. Councillor Yates.
All right, thank you. Yes, I echo Councillor Pert's comments, and again, yes, I'd like to congratulate the chair on her leadership skills. Certainly keeping me in check, so to speak. Teamwork, was it right? Okay, very good. I don't want to understate 2 things. One is this is an opportunity for changing land use, and it's an opportunity for creating an economic benefit of that. It's not just a case of ring fencing land for 2.5 million trees, and then that is sacrosanct and nobody goes near there. It's got to be an embedded part of what Staffordshire does. And I think the other thing which we've got to bear in mind is this is 2.5 million trees which is required as the residual carbon sequestration, if we're talking about that, of the carbon footprints which this council has got after it's achieved all its other work which it's got to do. And on top of that, we'll have something similar from the cumulative districts and boroughs, if we're thinking about that. Now, okay, the districts and boroughs don't quite have the highways teams, but they do have the household recycling collections and things. So in some respects, that's close to equivalent. So probably from a local authority, the Tier 1 and Tier 2, you're probably talking land use change enough for 4 million trees, which is 10,000 acres, which is significant, you know, expressed in farms as a significant number of farms. You're talking, you know, usual Staffordshire small farm in the north, probably 200 equivalent farms. You know, I'm not going to equate it to Olympic-sized swimming pools, just medium-sized farms. So it's significant land use change. So that land use needs to actually be productive land use in the medium-long term, which is what we've alluded to. On top of that, then we haven't got that land. I'm sure the boroughs and districts haven't got that land. We've got some. We can obviously seed it, for want of a better term. We would be looking at working with partners, and that would become the development of the Staffordshire Forest concept. But those partners themselves would be looking at their own requirement for sequestration, so the numbers sort of multiply. So it is ambitious. I think it is very necessary. I think it is very thought out and planned. I just think that the next step becomes extremely important, and the buy-in for that important, because time is ever coming short. And the final point which I'll raise as well, which is key, is one of the things which shot out on that slide of the overall benefits was the biodiversity benefit. And we do know that the UK is very much biodiversity depleted. It's suffered from the ravages of overdevelopment and over-farming in some respects to reduce the biodiversity which we've got. I think there's one call where we're 70% biodiversity depleted. So I would like to see this fit in with the plans which the council have got for the Plan for Nature approach, which the Staffordshire Wildlife Trust have got, and sort of work together as partnerships to deliver on multiple levels. You know, we've moved away from looking at monocrops, and certainly the Norbury Hall estate was a mixed blend, and it did provide that, but we've also got to be conscious of making sure that the biodiversity fits in with that. And I would like to hear your comments about how the Plan for Nature is developing alongside this particular strategy. Thank you.
I think you're quite right, Councillor Yates. I think it's a central plank of local nature recovery is using our land better for nature recovery. But also, I think the other side of it, which you did mention in your remarks as well, is that we still need to use those farms for productive measures, isn't it? And that's not only food production, which is really important, livestock, etc., but also through the better use of woodland that we can develop on there, and that becomes an industry. Look at Norbury. I went along with members to Norbury, and you can see what was being developed there, and the potential there really is amazing. So I really support that, and I really endorse this report as well, Chair and Chair of the committee. I'd like to echo the comments made for the Chair of the committee and also the members on that committee. I think have done an excellent piece of work on, which I look forward to taking through to Cabinet, and there'll be battles ahead on this, I think, because but it's a key part of what the Council needs to do. If we get to that end bit, we need to I can't even say the word, cestusquated. Yeah. You know, offset and all of that, and that's the way to do it through tree planting, and not just tree planting, but other sort of environmental measures and other environmental plantings to help us along our way. Thank you.
James, did you want to come in at this comment?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just responding there to Councillor Yates's query about sort of our nature declarations and biodiversity. Forestry is my passion, is my background, and woodland edge habitat is the most diverse habitat in the UK. So by thinking about land use change and how we change, it will come hand in hand with our nature declarations and benefit biodiversity.
Thank you. Councillor Heath.
Yeah, I did indicate to speak before you came back, Simon, because I just want to stress, though, that there's got to be constraint over the land that plant these trees on. Because, yeah, I hear what's being said, but we need agricultural land. This island is a small island, population grows and grows and grows. There are other, constraints with the people putting the different things up on the land for the climate change. And if we pick good land up, we're going to be importing more and more food. It's going to be making more and more problems for climate change. We need to look, England could provide everything the English people need for food if, with the right help. So when you sort of going for this forest planting and tree planting, there's places where it isn't suitable for food, and even cattle. We need milk. We need to bear them side by side. And I was heartened by what Simon said, that you have thought about this, but I think it is flagging up more and more as a farmer.
Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Chairman. I did indicate to speak and then I changed my mind because it's a very positive report and it's to be congratulated, as has already been said. And mine was a bit of a negative thought, sorry, so that's why I said I wasn't going to speak. And it's nothing actually to do with this particular report, but it's an observation. We have got in Staffordshire one of the most beautiful areas, the Chase, Cannock Chase. It's absolutely beautiful. And I know they do a lot of tree planting, they've got it really in order over there. But why then do we, sorry, this is the negative bit, sorry, and it's nothing to do with you or the committee that have done this work. It's, you go to, and you know what Samantha will know what I'm talking about, you suddenly hit the Scilly Isles at Churchbridge. We've got here tree planting on the Chase, for the emissions that they produce, but then you've got a negative impact running close side by side, the amount of traffic that sits in one after the other, and you do know what I'm talking about. So what I'm saying is that we're doing a good thing there, but it's being taken away by the bad things that are happening in Churchbridge and around there. And particularly more so now they've got the new stores over there. It's just an absolute, it's like a car park to get through anywhere. So what I'm saying is, you need to be mindful where these take place as well as, is the point I wanted to make. But I didn't want it to be a negative comment on your report, if you know where I'm coming from. But I think it's important when you're looking at these places to make sure that you're not doing a negative, a good positive, and then a negative right next door to it. And that's all I really wanted to sort of say. Thank you.
I think it's important to make those points, Councillor Perry. Really important that we do understand the same. Councillor, where we do this is really important and how we do that. Anybody else, or can I go back to the lengthy recommendations that are from on the here, which is consider the draft report of the Climate Change Working Group and we further refine the report and the following recommendations to Cabinet. And the recommendations are through from A through to F. And was there one G where the Councillor Thompson was going to present this to Cabinet, or was that was just no? Okay, so A to F. Are members happy with the recommendation through to A to F? Oh, not you prefer to. Are we happy with that, members? Yes? And once again, thank you very much for everyone who's been involved in this fantastic piece of work. So we'll move on to the final item of the agenda, which is the work programme. So we can quickly just go through the work programme, folks. That'd be really good. I said at the outset that it was important that the work that the MTFS group is doing is starts to now put together its report, because we want to make sure that goes in a timely manner to Cabinet in order for them to make some comment and not for the situation to be that it was all too late and everything had already been done. So, but that is part of the work programme anyway. So I don't know whether people have had the opportunity to have a look at the work programme. Is there anything that glaringly sticks out there, Mandy, that we need to be aware of?
Just that your next meeting's on the 18th of December, and the only item of business that has been added to the work programme since your last meeting is the corporate plan, which, because of timescales, we've had to convert the call-in meeting, which was reserved for the 8th of March, into a proper meeting. So it's been added to... a proper meeting next year? Yep. It is, yeah. 8th of March is, okay. 2024. I am trying to rearrange the items of business from the 26th of February to the 8th of March, so that you'll be having one meeting instead of one each week. Yeah, that'd be good. I think, won't it, if we can manage to do that.
So anybody on the work programme? No? Okay, thank you for that. So item 9, exclusion of the public. Chairman, there's no items in confidential, so thank you all very much for your attendance this morning, and I'm sorry for those of you who need to hang on, because we've got an MTFS working group meeting which will follow shortly after this meeting, but thank you all for your attendance this morning.